March 24th, 1951, 6 in the morning. The President of the United States sits at his desk in the family quarters, reading glasses low on his nose, 6 newspapers spread in front of him. It is a habit he has kept for decades. A china cup of coffee is cooling to his right. The study is quiet, except for the soft turn of a page. This morning, every paper carries the same story on the front. General Douglas MacArthur has issued a public ultimatum to the Chinese military. He has threatened to expand the war to their coastline. He has offered, personally, in the field, to accept their surrender. No one in Washington knew it was coming. Not the Secretary of State, not the Joint Chiefs, not the man holding the newspaper. Truman reads the statement a second time, then a third. His jaw tightens. What the president reads over coffee this morning will force him, within 17 days, to fire the most famous soldier in America. He will do it over commercial radio. His approval rating will fall to 22%. Flags across the country will drop to half-mast. Not for a death, for a dismissal. But that is still 17 days away. For now, there is only the newspaper, the coffee, and a question he has been avoiding for a year. What do you do when the most celebrated general in America decides he outranks the man elected to command him? To understand why Truman does not pick up the phone and fire MacArthur that morning, we must look at what Douglas MacArthur has become by 1951. He is not just a general. He is something the American military has never produced before. A living monument. He accepted Japan's surrender on the deck of the USS Missouri in 1945. He wrote the country's post-war constitution. He gave Japanese women the right to vote. An entire civilization rebuilt by one man's decree. He has not set foot on the American mainland in 14 years. 14 years commanding everything, answering to no one. His staff have insulated him from uncomfortable reality for so long that he has stopped being able to distinguish his own judgment from absolute truth. When he walks into a room, generals straighten their ties. When he speaks, congressmen take notes. His profile has been on the cover of Life magazine. American children know his face the way they know Washington's. Truman is his opposite. A haberdasher from Missouri. A former senator who inherited the presidency when Roosevelt died. He wears off-the-rack suits. He plays poker. He writes his own letters by hand. The public has never liked him as much as they liked Roosevelt. They do not like him nearly as much as they like MacArthur. Truman understands exactly what that means. Firing Douglas MacArthur is not a personnel decision. It is a political detonation. It will look, to the American public, like a small man shooting a giant in the back. It will give the Republican Party ammunition for a generation. It will split the country in half at a moment when the country cannot afford to be split. But Truman has been reading the classified cables from Tokyo. He has seen what MacArthur is doing. The public has not. The question underneath the politics is older than Korea and larger than either man. What happens when a democracy's most celebrated general decides the Constitution is a suggestion? The Constitution has an answer. Making it stick is the hard part. The signs have been building for months. August 1950. MacArthur flies to Taiwan without authorization from Washington. He meets Chiang Kai-shek on the tarmac. He promises military coordination across the strait. Photographs appear the next morning in every American newspaper. Truman has spent the entire summer maintaining careful neutrality on China. Japan is still being rebuilt. The Soviets are watching. The Allies are watching. MacArthur makes American neutrality meaningless in an afternoon. Truman sends a private cable to Tokyo. You do not make foreign policy for the United States. The rebuke is absolute. Washington expects the matter to end there. It does not end there. Weeks later, MacArthur sends a statement to the veterans of foreign wars. He calls the administration's China policy appeasement. He calls it defeatism. He sends it as an open letter to the American public, arguing that their own president is choosing surrender over victory. In the code of conduct that governs American generals, that is mutiny in all but name. Every officer in the Army knows it. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs knows it. Truman knows it. And Truman absorbs it. Because Truman absorbs it, MacArthur draws the obvious conclusion. October 15th, 1950. The President of the United States wants to meet his general. Truman has flown 14,000 miles from Washington. MacArthur has flown 1,900 from Tokyo. They are meeting on Wake Island, a coral speck in the Pacific, chosen because it is a rough halfway point. The island has an airstrip and a shed. When the president's plane lands, MacArthur is not on the tarmac. Protocol requires that. He is waiting in a nearby shed. Truman will remember this moment for the rest of his life. When they finally sit down across a wooden table in a small conference room, MacArthur is wearing an open-collar khaki shirt. No tie, no salute for the commander-in-chief. He glances at his watch during the conversation, as if he has somewhere more important to be. The room is small. The ceiling is low. A ceiling fan turns without purpose in the Pacific heat. An aide takes shorthand notes at the corner of the table. Truman asks him about China. MacArthur waves his hand. Very little chance of Chinese intervention. The war is practically over. The boys will be home by Christmas. He says it with the absolute confidence of a man who has not been contradicted in 9 years. Truman takes notes. He thanks him. He boards his plane. The joint communiqué says the two men spoke frankly and found full agreement on the state of the war. In the newsreels, they shake hands on the tarmac. In private, on the flight back to Washington, Truman tells an aide that he has just met, in his words, God's right-hand man. He says it without a trace of humor. 6 weeks later, 300,000 Chinese soldiers cross the Yalu River. MacArthur's Home by Christmas offensive collapses into the longest retreat in American military history. At the Chosin Reservoir, in temperatures of 30 degrees below zero, Marines are surrounded and fight their way out through Chinese lines with rifle bolts frozen to their gloves. Morphine ampules have to be thawed in the mouth before they can be injected. The 8th Army breaks apart in the north. Seoul falls. The line is eventually stabilized 200 miles south of the 38th parallel, at a cost that American newspapers are still counting in January. Thousands of American soldiers die in a war their general has personally guaranteed, on the record, to their families, is already over. MacArthur's response is not an apology. It is a demand. He demands permission to bomb mainland China. He demands permission to use nuclear weapons across the border. He demands authority to blockade the entire Chinese coast. He proposes dropping a belt of radioactive cobalt along the Manchurian frontier. When Washington refuses each request, he threatens to resign. Each time, Truman absorbs it. Each time, MacArthur takes the silence as permission. The line keeps moving, but there are only so many lines. By early 1951, the war has ground to a bloody stalemate near the 38th parallel. MacArthur wants to widen it. Truman wants out. For weeks, Truman has been drafting a peace proposal, a carefully worded ceasefire offer, negotiated line by line with the State Department and the Joint Chiefs. Not everything the United States wants, but enough to stop the dying. The document is ready. The president is preparing to release it. Someone in Tokyo hears about it. On March 24th, without calling the White House, without alerting a single person in the chain of command, MacArthur issues a public statement addressed directly to the Chinese High Command. He tells Beijing that their forces are on the verge of collapse. He warns that any decision to expand the war to China's coastal areas and interior bases would, in his own words, doom Red China to the risk of imminent military collapse. He offers, personally, to accept their surrender in the field. 4 months earlier, Truman had issued a presidential directive requiring every military commander to clear public statements with the State Department before release. MacArthur sent no draft for review. He issued the statement from Tokyo and let the president read it in a morning newspaper. Beijing reads the statement the same afternoon. Truman's peace proposal never reaches them. MacArthur has already told the Chinese what America's position is. And America's position, according to MacArthur, is total victory or nothing at all. The proposal is dead before it is sent. That evening, alone in his study, Truman opens his private diary. The room is quiet. The clock on the mantelpiece ticks. A single lamp is on. He writes in his own careful handwriting, in ink, on a page he has kept locked in his desk since before the war. MacArthur had taken matters into his own hands. He had made a unilateral pronunciamento which undermined my peace proposal and hurt our relations with our allies. He writes it for himself. No one is watching. No one will read it for 40 years. But the president has made a decision. He just has not said it yet. April 5th, 1951, the House of Representatives. Representative Joseph Martin, the Republican minority leader, rises from his seat and begins reading a letter aloud into the chamber. It is addressed to him personally. It is signed by General Douglas MacArthur. MacArthur writes that limiting the war to Korea is appeasement. He writes that there is no substitute for victory. He writes that those who understand the importance of Asia should speak out openly against the administration. The letter is a weapon. It has been mailed during an active war, from a theater commander to an opposition leader, to argue against the strategy of his own commander-in-chief. By morning, every newspaper in America has printed it. Truman reads the letter in the Congressional Record over breakfast. He does not call anyone. He walks to his study. He opens his diary. He writes 6 words. This was it. I would relieve him. That is the entire entry. He has absorbed Wake Island. He has absorbed the Taiwan incident. He has absorbed the VFW letter. He has watched MacArthur kill his peace proposal. He has said nothing publicly through any of it, but writing to the political opposition during an active war to campaign against the military policy of his own government has no interpretation that can be made acceptable. The next morning, Truman calls General George Marshall into the Oval Office. Marshall is the Secretary of Defense. He is the architect of the Allied victory in Europe. He is the man who first identified Douglas MacArthur as a general officer in 1917. Truman tells him what he is considering. He asks for his assessment. Marshall does not hesitate. "Mr. President," he says, "you should have fired him 2 years ago." The room is silent for a moment. The Joint Chiefs are consulted. The verdict is unanimous. The order is drafted. The order is signed on April 10th. The White House plans a careful, dignified notification. A sealed letter will be hand-delivered to Tokyo by a presidential envoy. A press release will follow the delivery. The ceremony of the thing matters. MacArthur has earned a formal ending. Then the White House learns that a reporter has the story. Someone panics. The order goes out over commercial radio. MacArthur is having lunch with his wife at the American Embassy in Tokyo when an aide enters the room with the news. He has just heard it on Armed Forces radio. The American Caesar, the man who has ruled the Pacific for 9 years, learns that he has been fired, the same way the rest of the world is learning. From the radio. By morning, the country is in shock. Flags drop to half-mast across America. Not for a death, for a dismissal. State legislatures pass resolutions condemning the president. Impeachment calls flood the Capitol switchboard until operators cannot keep up. Truman's approval rating falls to 22%, the lowest of any sitting president to that point in American history. MacArthur returns to the United States as a martyr. 7 million people line the streets of New York for the ticker tape parade. It is the largest in American history. It is larger than any parade for any returning general, any returning president, any astronaut who will later walk on the moon. He addresses a joint session of Congress. His voice is steady. He speaks with the practiced cadence of a man who knows every camera in the world is on him. Old soldiers never die, he says. They just fade away. Members of Congress weep openly. The Republican Party begins discussing him as a presidential candidate for 1952. Truman issues a single sentence to the press. The change of command in the Far East means no change whatsoever in the policy of the United States government. He refuses to elaborate. He does not defend the decision. He does not attack the general. He treats the matter as already settled by the Constitution. In May, the Senate opens hearings. MacArthur testifies for 3 days. He is certain. He is dramatic. He speaks in absolutes, and the senators lean forward to catch every word. Then Marshall takes the stand. 7 days. No poetry, no drama, no absolutes. He reads from the classified cables. He reads the Joint Chiefs analysis. He reads the telegrams between Tokyo and Washington that the public has never seen. He explains, in clinical language, what MacArthur's strategy would actually have meant. Soviet divisions moving west in Europe while America is tied down in Asia. NATO collapsing within months. Every American ally in the Pacific quietly walking away. A nuclear war nobody wins. Marshall never raises his voice. He does not need to. The air leaves the balloon. MacArthur fades. Every democracy eventually faces this test. Korea was incidental. MacArthur was incidental. The real question had nothing to do with either. The real question was what happens when a general becomes more popular than the president who commands him, and decides, quietly, in his own mind, that popularity means authority. The Constitution has an answer for that. But the Constitution is paper. Somebody has to be willing to pick it up. Truman made that decision alone, in a quiet study, at 1 a.m, with no one watching. He wrote it in 6 words in a diary that nobody would read for 4 decades. The Joint Chiefs had not yet been consulted. Marshall had not yet been asked. The cameras were not rolling. This was it. I would relieve him. The order went out 12 days later. The country nearly broke. Truman left office with the lowest approval rating of any modern president. MacArthur received the largest parade in American history, and the Republic held. when the most celebrated general in America decided he outranked the man elected to command him, the Republic was saved not by a speech, not by an army, not by a court ruling, but by 6 words, written in the dark, in a diary nobody would read for 40 years. That is what civilian government looks like on the night nobody is watching. A lot of this story came into focus for me through The General versus the President by H.W. Brands, which I listened to on Audible while putting this together. If you want to go deeper, there's a link in the description for a free Audible trial. You can listen to it yourself and support the channel at the same time.